Everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to continue working through ThunderDome. Now, if you haven't heard of ThunderDome, you need to check it out. ThunderDome is a red team multi-cloud network released by Pwned. Now, to get access to ThunderDome, you do need an annual membership to Pwned, but the coolest thing is an annual membership is only $200 for the entire year. That gives you access to all of the premium labs as well as access to ThunderDome. Now, ThunderDome is unique. I've never seen anything like it. It's sort of like the red team capstone on Try Hack Me is what it reminds me of, but it's all in the cloud. So you need to compromise AWS, GCP, and Azure to reach to the top of ThunderDome. Now, I am technically on staff at Pwned. The reason I say technically is I do it as a volunteer. I'm not actually paid anything, but I love Pwned. Really appreciate how they're making cloud training accessible because all the other platforms charge like thousands of dollars to give you access to the same stuff. And so I volunteer my time at Pwned to help people break into cloud security. And I know a lot of people have been having issues getting into ThunderDome, but that's mainly because cloud security is super new to many of us. So you can remember like when Active Directory, when people are first getting into that, you just felt lost. And I know that's the same for many of you as you get into cloud security. So here's what we are doing at Pwned. Every single week, I'm going to go through the next flag. So last week, I gave you detailed steps on getting initial access to the environment, and I let you find that first flag on your own. So in this video, we're going to work on the second flag. I'm going to give you my full thought methodology when I did it myself the first time. So just to be clear, I did do this already offline. I think I've done this twice at this point now, but I'll give you my full thought process, things I tried that didn't work, and just guide you through the process on finding that second flag. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. Here we are. And so here was the first flag, emerge through the breach. And just to recap, we had the starting point here. We had a web server. On the web server, we found in the source code, I don't think I took a screenshot of it, but a link to Bitbucket. We looked through Bitbucket. We got username enumeration. We found an access key. We were able to use the AWS CLI or command line interface to get the account ID. And then we also found a password here, and there was password reuse. So the first step of getting this flag is logging into the AWS console. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen just for a moment because I don't remember who I'm logged into on AWS. I don't want to spoil more of Pwned than I'm intending to here. Oh, cool. I'm logged in as Haru. Let me just log out. Sign in. All right, so with that information that we found in the first video, let me walk you through this. So we'll jump back over to my notes here. We have our account. Now, once again, if you missed this video is on my YouTube page right now. I'm not going to guide you through the first flag. I'm just going to guide you through, now that we have initial access, how do we find the second flag? So let's go ahead and grab our account ID right here. We're going to log into this AWS account. We'll drop that in the account ID there. I'm actually going to pull this out just so I can tab back and forth. And we need to grab our user, which is Haru at massivepharma.com. Haru at massivepharma.com. And let's go ahead and grab our password, which remember we had password reuse, so treatment, exclamation mark, treatment, exclamation mark, and we will go ahead and sign in. So that is what I showed in the first video, initial access to AWS. And we can switch over to our AWS console, and this is what we have. Now, when you find that first flag, you're going to find something else. You're also going to find the access key and the secret. Now, once again, I'm not going to show you where that first flag is. I want you to do that work yourself. But if you can think about the fact that we're finding an access key and a secret, well, the word secret should stand out to you. So look for something in AWS that might be used for storing secrets, and you'll be able to find that first flag I showed you in the first video, as well as get the AWS CLI credentials for the Haru account. Now, I'm going to get those from my other notes. Let's jump to this, and we are going to create a note for this second flag. Now, the second flag is called pulled from the sky. So we'll do that. We'll go ahead and make Notion full width because I don't like the weird centering thing that it does. And what I like to do as I'm starting these is I'll go like this and I'll say, all right, here is our starting point. So what do we have as we start this second flag? Well, once you find the first flag, here is the information that we have. For initial access, we have our username, our password of treatment, our account ID that we already discovered before. And like I said before, once you figure out where flag number 1 is at, you'll You'll also get access to the AWS CLI access. We have an access key ID and a secret access key. Now, if you're new to AWS, that kind of functions as a username and a password. Our username would be the access key ID, and our password would be the secret access key. So step one, as we dive into this, is just configuring our AWS CLI to authenticate as this Haru user. Now, the way we can do that is AWS configure profile Haru. You can see I've already done this, but I'll still go through the full steps so you can see it. We'll grab the access key ID. Whoops. Flip back over to here. We will grab our secret access key. US East 1 is fine, we'll leave that. And now just to confirm that we have access, we can run the equivalent in AWS as who am I. So in Linux, you do who am I to figure out who you are. Well, in AWS, they have to make it more confusing, of course. So it's AWS STS get caller identity profile Haru like that. And we can see we have authenticated to the account. So let's go ahead and just grab that for our notes to show, yes, we have authenticated. So we'll drop back over to Notion and we'll just go code. There we go. So we are authenticated as Haru at massivepharma.com. But let's jump back to the console, right? Because everybody loves a good GUI. And we can see some recently visited information. One of the first things you should check when you get on an AWS account is, hey, what EC2s are running? Now, once again, if you're new to AWS, the terminology can be really confusing because I swear AWS just likes to do these crazy names to make things confusing for you. So we have to look things up in their documentation. But an EC2 in AWS is just a virtual machine. So when you hear EC2, think about virtual machine. So if you use VirtualBox, it's sort of like that, but in the cloud. And when we do this, we have a few different pieces of information that should stand out to you. We have some instances. This would be like our virtual machines that are running. We have an admin instance and a web prod instance. Now, I tried initially when I had access to this, which you probably did as well, is if you scan this IP, I tried to log in as Haru and using password reuse, but that does not work. So we can't actually access these VMs, at least not right now. But if we jump back out to our EC2 interface here, one thing that will stand out to you as you get more familiar with AWS is we have a snapshot here. Now, a snapshot is like a point-in-time capture of a virtual machine. Now, if we just look at, for example, we have the snapshot right here. Let's go over to this and say AWS snapshot, and we'll just do that. We'll do snapshot, maybe exploit. What up, Screwface? Screwface said switching from YouTube to Twitch. And she walks and says switching from LinkedIn to Twitch. Hey, welcome. Yeah, for those of you on LinkedIn, hey, I actually do see a comment. Someone said, thanks for this wonderful session, GM. Usually I don't see comments on LinkedIn. I'm glad I'm seeing them now. Thank you, my friend, for the kind words, and thank you for joining and hanging out with us. But we can look at this. So we have information here. Let's read through hacktricks.cloud. So we have an EBS snapshot dump, checking a snapshot locally. Curious how they go on doing this. So they use dsnap to do it, installing VirtualBox, run with Docker. You can see that dsnap is created by the best pen testing company on the earth, aka Rhino Security Labs. So you can do it with dsnap, but dsnap is actually built into Paku. Let me do AWS Rhino Security Labs. Anytime you're doing AWS research, honestly, just look up Rhino and we probably have a blog post about it. But let's read through this just so we're not script kiddies and we understand what's going on. So AWS EBS snapshots are static backups of AWS EBS volumes. In other words, they are copies of the disk attached to an EC2 instance at a specific point in time. EBS snapshots can be copied across regions and accounts or even downloaded and run locally. The EBS direct APIs are interesting because they allow low-level access to the underlying data in a snapshot. You can download, upload, or view change blocks between snapshots, etc., etc. So a new Paku module. This blog post, I think, is from a while ago, but it still is there. EBS snapshots are often copies of active EWS or EC2 instance volumes and can contain an abundance of interesting information or secrets. The closest equivalent I think of is like when you're doing a CTF and you have access to Docker files and you can like look at the actual underlying operating system. That's kind of what this is like. These snapshots tend to make for interesting targets during a cloud penetration test. So in Paku, we have the EBS Explore snapshot for exploring snapshots. However, this can be difficult to use as it requires an already running EC2 instance in the target account. In this blog, we will download and search EBS snapshots locally, and that's what we're going to do. Introduce a new Python library called dsnap and review the new EBS download snapshot Paku module. Now, I think I told some people on Discord, hey, you can try using AWS CLI to do this. Technically, it is possible to download snapshots with AWS CLI, but it's not easy. There's quite a complex process you go through, but Paku does make it quite easy. And it says you can explore the images locally with Vagrant or VirtualBox. You know, you can actually mount these images right in your Kali Linux machine. So this will guide through this. Here's the Paku module. We don't need to go through the walkthrough part of the blog because I'm literally going to show you how to do this. So let's go ahead and open up our terminal here. And we can open up Paku. Now, if you don't have Paku, you can do pipx. If you don't have pipx installed, I would encourage you to install it. It's just like a Python virtual environment. So when you install new tools, it doesn't break everything. But pipx install Paku like this. And the reason I recommend pipx is if you have installed Python modules, Python packages, often in the requirements or what's installed might be different versions than what's already installed in other applications. And then every time you run a Python command, your Python thing throws errors or they break. Pipx loads it all in its own virtual environment so you don't break your other Python apps. But you can see I already have Paku installed. So we'll just type Paku. So here is Paku. We're going to go ahead and start a new session. So I'm going to choose option 0. And what we'd like to name this session, I already have Haru there. So I'm just going to call this Haru 2. All right, now the first thing we need to do is import the keys we set up. So in the beginning of the video, we configured a profile called Haru, and we configured it with Haru's access key ID and his secret. So what we want to do now is import those keys. You can see the command right here. So we'll do import keys Haru. All right, we have our keys imported as Haru. And now if we don't remember what we're looking for, we can do search EBS, and we have some information here. If we search for EBS, we have EBS Explore Snapshots, restores and attaches EBS volumes and snapshots to an EC2 instance of your choice. Now, once again, you need access to an EC2 instance. So totally fine if you have one available, but we're not going to do it that way. Instead, we're going to download it locally. Now, just to be clear, if we jump back over to AWS, you can see the size of the snapshot is 8 gigabytes. So it's going to take you a while to download. So I went ahead and already downloaded it because I thought it'd be really boring for all of us to stare at the screen together while it downloads. So just know when you do this, it's going to take a little bit. You are downloading an 8 gigabyte snapshot, but we'll still go through the commands that you would need to run. So we will go ahead. First, we are going to, well, let's just try to run it. That right there. So we'll do run EBS Explore snapshots, and you can see, oh, not explore, more download snapshots. Download snapshots. And now you can see, I'm going to hit no on this. It's saying, hey, we can't do that because we need to figure out what snapshots do we have. So first we need to enum the snapshots. Now we know if we jump back to the AWS console, all cloud providers, AWS as well, have different regions that they serve resources in. So we have to see, hey, what region are we looking at? And we're in region US East 1. So the first thing we need to do is allow this. Oh, my phone's telling me to stream on Twitch. I'm already streaming on Twitch. Phone, chill out. The first thing we need to do is use EBS enum volume snapshots to find the snapshot that is in the console. So let's do that. We'll do run EBS enum volumes snapshots region US East 1. If you don't do a region tag, it will just check every single region and it will eventually find it. It's just going to take longer. We know it's in US East 1, so we'll just do US East 1. And it says no account IDs were passed, blah, blah. We can hit Y so it automatically gets our account ID. And there we go. So we have 2 volumes found, 1 snapshot found. Now we should be able to run our command to download the snapshot. Download snapshot. And now we need to select the snapshot. You can see we only have one annotated by the 0 here. If there's multiple snapshots, it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3. So we just want to say, hey, we want snapshot 0. And you can see we ran into an error. And I was hoping this would happen because this happened to me as well when I was going through this. What it's trying to do, and I'm actually going to look into the Pwned code base myself, and I might see if I can do a pull request to fix this, because it should just automatically create the directory we need. But if you run into this error, it's just saying, hey, you don't have this directory, so you just need to go ahead and make this directory. So I'm going to see if I can go like this. There we go. So all that did was make the directory it's looking for, the Haru2 downloads EBS snapshots, and now we'll run it again and it should succeed. So once again, we're select 0 for our snapshot. And it's gonna start downloading. Now I said before, we are not gonna watch it download. I didn't mean to suspend it. I already did this work. So if we go to CD, home, Tyler, local, share, I think, Pwned, EBS, snapshots, Haru, there we go. EBS, nope, snapshots, okay. Downloads, EBS, snapshots. There we go. So I already downloaded the snapshot here, but now that we have it downloaded, we can mount this image and we can begin exploring the file system locally. Now let me get my notes pulled up because I always forget the syntax for this, and I'll guide you through this. The first thing that we need to do is, well, I totally forgot to take notes as well. I forgot to drop this stuff in our notes. I should. Nah, it's fine. I have it in my other notes. I'm at least showing you guys. But what we need to do is mount this image. So the way we can do that is we'll do sudo fdisk-l, and then this is just listing the disk and what is inside of the image like that. At least I think that's the syntax. Let's see if I'm right. All right, so that is the syntax, and we can see we have our Linux file system here, and that is the one that we are going to want to mount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a directory in my mount folder, and we'll just call it mount point, which I don't think I'm going to have permissions to do that, so we'll just do sudo like that. There it is. There's our mount point where we're going to mount the file system, and let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do sudo mount-o loop, and then we need to give it the offset. Now this is a little bit confusing, but our offset, I believe, is we take the sectors and do we multiply it by 512, I think. Let me double check my notes before I tell you wrong. When I first did this, I literally just copy and pasted to ChatGPT and said, hey, bruh, what's the proper way to find an offset? So actually what we do is we take the start right here. We multiply this number by 512 to get the offset. So if we just do this, I don't even think there's a calculator built into Kali. Oh, there is. All right, sweet. So we'll take 227,328 times 512. And that is our number. Can I just copy it from there? Sweet. So we will do that offset. That's just telling it, hey, here's what I want you to begin as we mount this image. Then we need to specify our image right there, and then our mount point, which we called mount point like that. I really hope this is the right syntax. Fingers crossed. Okay. We didn't get any errors. That's always a good sign, right? When things don't bug out and error out on us. Let's check it out. CD mount. Boom, and we have access to the full file system of the EC2. Let me just pause right there. Anyone have, I know that was confusing, and for those of you joining live, if there's any questions about that or something you want me to dig into a little more, let me know, and I can do that. But once again, we were able to download that EBS snapshot with Pwned, and I shared before it's 8 gigabytes, so it takes a little bit of time, but I downloaded ahead of time. So we downloaded the snapshot that we found in the console, and then we mounted the snapshot locally after we found the offset point, and that was just taking the start value times 512. That ends up being our offset, and we mounted it locally. So now we can explore the file system of the EC2 and see what interesting information we are able to find. I'll give you guys a second to see if anyone has questions about that. Otherwise, we will keep on digging into things. I'm going to grab a drink of water. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So it's not always start 512. It's start sector size. Yeah, good clarification there. Neffel says, that's easier. I use Docker. Yeah, there's multiple ways to do it. Like online, it says to use like entire own VM and VirtualBox. I think it's easy enough just to mount it locally. Then you don't have to spin up a bunch of other stuff. But okay, now that we have access to this, you kind of want to treat this like you do when you get initial access to any standalone VM. So let's go ahead and do cd home and see what users we have access to. So we have Haru, we have Nacer, and we have Ubuntu. Now we already have access as Haru, probably not too interesting, but Nacer is a new user that we don't yet have access as. So let's cd into Nacer's folder. Let's just become root because YOLO. Now we'll cd into Nacer's folder. And Nacer, his bash history goes nowhere, but there's a few things that stand out to me. We have Azure credentials and AWS credentials, but now this might trip you up. At least it tripped me up at first. If we go, how to show it to you? Let's go into the AWS folder. And we can see, hey, we have credentials. Let's cat this out. And you do have an access key and a secret access key, but I don't believe these credentials actually work because remember, this is an EC2 snapshot. It's likely these keys may have been rotated by now. Let me just see if I'm right though, because I honestly don't remember if they work. Let's give it a shot. So we'll set it up as Nacer and we will go ahead and grab this access key ID. We will go ahead and grab this secret. That's fine. And now we'll do AWS STS get caller identity to verify access. And you can see it does not work. So let's jump back out because you have a similar thing with Azure. So if we go into Azure, we can see, hey, do we have any interesting credentials here? One thing that would be interesting, you'll learn this as you work on Azure, is getting a refresh token. If you can get a refresh token in Azure, you can turn that refresh token into access tokens for different Azure services. You can actually exfiltrate Teams messages and emails and all those kinds of things. And that is stored here, the MSAL token cache. So if we cat that out, we have information here, and we have a refresh token. Now, once again, this refresh token, I don't believe works, because I think when I was first doing this myself, this is the attack path I tried initially, was using this refresh token to authenticate to Azure, and it didn't work, because once again, this isn't an active EC2. This is a snapshot, a point in time of the EC2. These things may have been rotated or have expired. But if we continue our enumeration, another folder you should know just from doing Linux CTFs is saying, hey, well, SSH looks interesting. We have those two EC2s or virtual machines we saw in the AWS console. We couldn't get access to it with Haru, but maybe Nacer has access to it. So let's cd SSH LA, and there we go. We have a private key right there. Let's cat out our private key, and we'll go ahead and grab this for our notes. And also so we can, use it. But let me grab that. Let's jump over to our notes. Nacer private key. And we have it right there. So let's go back to our regular terminal. And we'll just do nano Nacer ID RSA. Change mode to 400, I think works. And now let's go back to our console here and go back to instances. And we have two instances. We have admin and we have web prod. So let's just see, can we SSH into one of these or both of them with Nacer's credentials? So SSH Nacer at that. Okay, so we cannot do it to that one. How about this one? Boom. We have access to this one. And we can grab this information here, drop it in our notes. And I also want to grab the public IP from the console. So that's this IP right here, the 44.28. All right. So we have access as Nacer to this IP, but there's no flag here. I'm pretty sure there's no flag here. Let me double check, because once again, I don't want to show you guys the flag. I just want to show you how to get to the flag, but make you do the work yourself. But from here, what should we do? Well, remember, we just looked at some AWS creds and Azure credentials from the previous one, but that was just a snapshot, so those credentials did not work. But hey, now that we have access to an active EC2, maybe we can find some better information here. So let's go ahead and LSLA. And sure enough, we have Azure, big Azure, lowercase Azure, and we have AWS. So let's just check out AWS. Cat credentials. And there we have some credentials here. So let me go back over to this. Oh yeah, this will work. AWS. Actually, let me switch back to myself. Tyler, Pwned Labs, ThunderDome, YouTube version. All right, AWS configure, profile, and Nacer. Where am I at with my life? Here we go. We'll grab our access key ID, drop that in there. We will go ahead and grab our secret access key, drop it in right there. Region US East 1 is fine. Now let's see if we have access now successfully as Nacer using our handy dandy AWS STS get caller identity profile Nacer. Boom. And we have access as Nacer. We will grab all of this for our notes. And we'll say AWS CLI access as Nacer. Like that. All right, that all looks good to me. And now for this flag, there's a little piece of information. At least I'm pretty sure. I get these flags confused in my head. Let me check my notes and make sure I'm thinking the right flag. Yes. So when we were going through this one right here, the emerge through the breach, here's what you need to keep in mind when it comes to ThunderDome, or really any red team network. Information you discover for one flagger in the beginning might be handy for the next flag or an upcoming flag. Now, when we were going through here, you will remember that we discovered a bucket, and the bucket at that time was not world listable. And once we got access as Haru, we also couldn't list this bucket. So here would be my encouragement, something to try. You discovered this bucket in flag number 1. Well, now in this flag number 2, now that we have AWS credentials as the Nacer user, maybe, just maybe, Nacer has access to that bucket. So strong hint there, obviously. Figure out that bucket from step 1, user credentials you just set up for Nacer, and see if you can find anything interesting in that bucket. Now, once you do that, there's another piece of information I would encourage you to check out. I shared before that, hey, if you have an Azure access token, which is stored here, or not an access token, rather an Azure refresh token as a user, there's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. Some labs that you can check out. If you go to Pwned Labs, look for any Azure labs that have something to do with token tactics and labs along those lines, and it will guide you through how you can abuse an Azure refresh token to do some really interesting information grabbing to pull down more information. Now, if you are still stuck at this point to get to the next flag, once again, next week I will make another short video guiding you through how to get through flag number 3 so you are not fully stuck. But before now and next week, I would encourage you to try it on your own. You have some information here. You know you need to do something with an Azure refresh token. Do some research, do some Googling, do some chat GPTing, and see if you can figure out what the next steps are in order to get to the other flag. But in this video, those are the detailed steps to get to flag number 2 of ThunderDome and to get deeper access into this network. So hey, hope you found this helpful, and I'll also drop a link in the description of this video to the Pwned Labs Discord as you're working through it. If you have questions, want a sanity check, there's a bunch of people in the Pwned Labs Discord, myself included. You can DM me and we'll love to give you a sanity check as you work your way through ThunderDome. So hey, hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you in the next one.